and above these is of evil. You have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, not to resist evil, but if one strikes thee on thy right cheek, turn him also the other. And if a man will contend with thee in judgment, and take away thy coat, let go thy cloak also unto him. And whosoever will force thee 1 mile, go with him other two. Give to him that asketh of thee, and from him that would borrow of thee turn not away. You have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that persecute and calumniate you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Analog Catholic. I know it's been a while, um, but I'm Rob, joined as always by,
That was so sad. I know it's been a while.
you know,
Um,
who's
I'm
laughing?
Ben.
There you
I'm Ben.
go.
Now we've
Uh,
replaced Ben with somebody else.
we replaced Benjamin with Ben,
Yeah.
so, oh wow, yeah. So today's topic, it's going to be a long apology from Ben and I for being away for so long from all of you. We know we have a very dedicated fan base of 30 listeners a month, and we love all of you very much.
Yeah,
Uh,
individually,
individually,
personally.
yep, I pray for you. No, we are actually not going to apologize. We don't do that, but we will we will talk about uh the current. I don't know if current's the right word. We're going to talk about the approach to social media. We talked about social media in a general sense before. The approach to social media from what's now being colloquially called Catholic Inc. Uh, Particularly, I think going over not necessarily like we're not gonna sit here and list off, content creators we like or don't like, or like this person's bad or that person's right, but rather we're gonna talk more like in a general sense of some common themes I've noticed on my use of social media in the Catholic community, some things Ben's picked up, and just in general, like what is a good virtuous way to approach these situations, and how should we really be witnessing the Catholic faith in social media? So, prior to this, Ben and I spoke, and he has a little less experience with this than I do. So I think I'm going to open up with a while ago, I wrote an article on my personal blog about the eighth commandment, about thou shalt not bear false witness. Now, that was motivated by uh, a article written by the Pillar. I'll say their name. I don't mind. I don't think they care. About Father Carlo Martins. Well, it wasn't really about that. That situation just actually provoked me into writing that. And the reason for that was, and I think I spoke of this before, but the reason for that was the article was written in a way to imply some guilt of his, um, or at least to imply the crime was worse than what was actually being accused of him. And this was not something that I simply misinterpreted. This was a very common thing on Twitter. They were getting called out for it. A lot of people were upset about this. The response from another group of Catholics was, this validates my prejudices against people like Father Carlo Martin, that quote unquote celebrity exorcists or celebrity priests um, are never as good as they say they are. Or they're not really good people, or like, that what's the saying? Like never meet your heroes. So it's like, oh, you're just gonna be disappointed because they're not great people. Um, and the one of the writers for the Pillar, one of the founders of the Pillars, is pretty outspoken that he is also of that same mindset. And so I found that whole situation really just to be, by the way, Father Cardamons has been totally vindicated. I'm not a fan of his. I don't listen to his podcast. I don't think I've ever read a single thing or listened to a single thing he's ever said. But I care about truth and justice. And so I was very upset about the whole situation because I felt it was very unfair to him. And I felt there was a lot of prejudice against him. And there's a lot of people that were saying, oh, this just proves my bias. Like I was correct in assuming this is like, you know, his, this is the type of person he is, right? So he's been totally exonerated of the whole situation. And it just really set with me this like uneasy feeling of there are people who are so bent on being right, they don't care about being virtuous, you know. So it's either, wording things in a way to imply certain things because you want them to be true. It's immediately assuming the guilt of someone because you don't like them because you have these prejudices against who they are or what they do. Um, and these are things that occur in humanity as it is. This is not like a Catholic exclusive thing, but this is where my concern comes in with we need to be better witnesses of that. We need to be the ultimate pursuers of truth and justice, and goodness, right? Like we are sitting here trying to evangelize the world, saying like we have truth, like we have justice, like virtue is found, justice is a cardinal virtue. It was a pagan virtue. It's not like exclusive to Catholicism, but again, like we are here to say like these things have been perfected in Christ, and we have the fullness of Christ in the Catholic Church. So we need to be better examples of these things. But this is a trend of what I've noticed on Catholic Twitter and on Catholic social media in general of this absolutely like throwing out any sense of propriety, any sense of moderation on opinions or compromise, any sense of like honestly like general fraternal correction or general fraternal love, and everyone's just pursuing things for their own sake. They're pursuing things for their own in-house political feelings. Um, and so I'm not saying any of that to call out the pillar or whatever, or any of the writers there or people there. I'm just saying like that was the first example. That wasn't really the first example, but that was like the big thing that finally sort of just teed me off to the whole situation. It was just seeing this popular, beloved priest get accused of something, see things get not misrepresented, but just not fully represented, whatever. And then having just so many people hop on and just say, I knew it, like he's a bad person. I always knew he's a bad person. And then they use that as a way to go on tangents about how public exorcists or again, quote unquote celebrity priests are like actually all secretly bad. Um, and the thing that really got me was that doesn't sound like a Catholic. That sounds like an enemy of the Catholics. It sounds like someone who is looking for excuses to tear down the church, tear down faithful people, to incite division, sow chaos. It just wasn't orderly, just virtuous conversations. And that's not, someone gets accused of something, you don't need to say like he's innocent. Um, you know, but you don't need to immediately go out and say, like this proves I was correct the whole time. Like this person's bad. People like him are bad. It's like, well, people like him are just priests that are trying to do the will of God. And so when you go out and say like, well, I disagree how his method is, therefore, when bad things happen, it validates my prejudices. Um, you're creating this system of just like what's the word for uncharitable judgment. Like there's like no room for mercy in that situation. And again, so it's just a very like un-Catholic approach to things. I'm harping on this particular because it was so big. It's been a big deal, and I think because the follow-up too was what really pissed me off. Sorry, I gotta put the explicit tag on this episode. Um, because when it came out that the charges were dropped, the law enforcement saw like no need to do anything. They're like, this is ridiculous. Like, this isn't anything. This was not an issue. This was not as bad as people were saying it was. There was like really no apology from anyone. The people that were ranting and raving, that were saying this proves everything I knew, right? My prejudices were correct. Like the way people were treating this priest, like there was no apology. There was no like we overreacted or things weren't as bad. There was just like a really bland blanket statement that's just like, yeah, things didn't happen. Okay. And again, this isn't on what I'm thinking of like Catholic media, but instead there's active people on what we would call Catholic Twitter, priests even who spent like days ranting and raving about this, saying this proves all their biases, this proves everything, proves their prejudices. And then when this news comes out, they say nothing. They don't apologize. They don't say I overreacted. They don't say I was incorrect about this. They don't even realize that what they've done is they've generated animosity towards their brother priest. It's actually a sin, pretty sure, to deliberately generate animosity towards clergy in the hierarchy in the church. So, like there's these issues on top of the fact that when you misrepresent the situation, you are also bearing false witness, which is a grave sin, right? It's grave matter. It's a violation of the commandment. Um, And this is just like an issue that is constant on Catholic social media. It's an issue that you just see a ton of frequently. There's so much lack of charity. If someone says this is what I think about a situation, it doesn't matter if that person just said something heretical. It doesn't matter if that person just said something that's literally just nothing more than a difference of opinion. There's immediate hostility. I've seen people who come on, call themselves like, Catholic apologists, and they're just like amateurs. Usually they're recent converts who are zealous and hot, hot on fire for the faith, which like, I'm not going to be one of those people that says they're not allowed to talk. There are some people that say like, you shouldn't be allowed to do anything publicly as a Catholic if you've just converted. You wait like 3 years or 5 years. I'm not like that, but I do think there is a problem with zealots that come out, not zealots, but like zealous converts, which that itself is not a problem, but they come out and they like, I'm going to be an apologist for the Catholic faith. And it's like, look, man, you need way more than you realize to like do this effectively. Most of the time they're not charitable too, which is like, again, another issue when they deal with Protestants or the Orthodox or other Catholics. They're very, there's like a lot of like impatience. Um, and so there's just like a lot of things, and I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, we just gotta like dredge up and talk about everyone's like sins and problems, but it's less that and more what's the approach to social media we as Catholics can do that actually truly like represents Christ that resides in us and like respects the Christ that resides in others. Um, and so one of my things has been when I was younger, pre-conversion, I would spend a lot of time on the internet. I still spend a lot of time on the internet, but way less than I used to. It was like literally all my time. And I was very trolly. I was very aggressive. I was very like a jerk, to say the least, to people online, especially strangers. I was always anonymous. I'm not anonymous now on Twitter, and part of that is I don't want the temptation to be those things again. I want to be genuine. I want to be straightforward. I don't want to be insincere. I don't want to be ironic. I don't want to be a jerk. Like if I'm going to express opinions or truths, especially regarding the faith, like I want those things to come from a place of sincerity, so no one doubts me. So in a sense, fulfilling what Christ was saying, right? With literally yes be yes and your no be no. Um, you know, there's more to read into that, but the big thing to take away from that is simply like you should be a man of your word. Like what you say should just be what you say, and it should be the truth. So that you don't need to swear or take oaths. When someone says, "Hey, can you do this?" and you just say yes, and they're like, "His yes means yes." There's no doubt in my mind. Like that's a virtue to strive for. And I think we need to and can strive for that on things like social media, where as chaotic as that thing is, as chaotic as the internet is, it's our responsibility to be ordered. Um, we're not meant to be chaotic in anything in our life, in our interior life, in our exterior life, in our family life, in our professional life. Like we're not meant to be chaotic. We're meant to be ordered. Not to say you need to micromanage your day to day and have these schedules, where you're like every 15 minutes, you know what you're doing, but you need to have a sense of what you're doing. And so when you're on the internet, when you're on social media, you need to have a sense of being deliberate. Um, so I'm gonna step off my soapbox real quick. I'm gonna let Ben come in and then and say some of the things that he has to say. Because I can rant about this. I could take the whole episode up, but I won't do that. Um, because Ben introduced himself, so he has to speak, or else we would be liars. And our yes would not be yes.
Um, yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page with this, which we usually are, I guess, on the podcast.
And the amount of
Uh,
times we say stuff like that. Yeah, I agree. I agree
I
100%.
completely disagree with Robert, but we're not going to talk about that. Uh,
That's not good content.
yeah, yeah, I think I like kind of what we ended with the thought of being deliberate.
Yeah.
Um, like we said at the top, like definitely like been on social media less than you have, and
Uh-huh.
I've been exposed to less of the like kind of Catholic Twitter arguments on social media. Um, but I do think like yeah, like it feels as if like social media by its nature is often undeliberate, or it's often like by its nature like antagonizing, um, and because that's what gets the clicks,
Yeah.
and not to say like that people do it for the clicks, but like I'm sure that it gets brought up in the algorithm when it is antagonizing. And so a lot of times, maybe people aren't doing it to be popular, but then it makes that kind of content popular. Um, but it's also, yeah, like we should as Catholics strive to be able to live the gospel well, in everything we do, including in, yeah, environments that seem like by nature kind of counter to the way that, we should be living. Um, Not to say that there isn't a place for, like being a little more edgy on stuff. Like I do think, like I think I've seen Catholic Answers, um, because I think we follow them on our on our Analog Catholic Instagram. So I think I've seen them when I've been on there, putting stuff up. And I think it's like they take screenshots of their Twitter engagements and put them on Instagram. Um, and they'll like repost, some Protestant saying something mean about the Catholic Church, and they'll like break apart the argument in kind of like a like sarcastic way.
Hmm.
Um, and like I think, like that's not like a direct like here's what the catechism says. Like that's like a, you're being a little jokey about it. So I think there's like a place for that. I don't think we're saying that like you can't like be funny or sarcastic or like a little bit, um like be a little goofy about it. Um but yeah, like I think there's a difference between that and like being like intentionally unkind or like being acting in a way that's alienating, um that like alienates people to the faith. Like I think
Hmm.
that's definitely problematic. And I think a lot of this too, it's like people that are just spend so much time on Twitter, they just start they turn into that. Like they turn into what everybody else is doing on Twitter, versus people that, like you were saying, like you, I would say as an
Hmm.
example, though I haven't like scrolled through your Twitter feed. I don't know if you even post on Twitter, but like people like you, that's like you're on Twitter, at times, but like it's such a small piece of your life.
Hmm.
Um, that like what you bring to Twitter is like real life. Like you take your true like Catholic family life, like that's your day-to-day experience, and then you go to Twitter and you're what you're bringing to Twitter is a human being, versus people that spend so much time on the internet. I think like the internet is forming them more as if not as much, if not more, than life out of the internet. And so what they're bringing to the internet is something kind of formed by the internet,
Yeah.
and then what they're bringing to like their family life is something formed by the internet, which is also problematic. So I think, yeah, like I think there's a beauty to like a good virtuous Catholic, um, engaging with social media on occasion, even like in a regular sense, as long as they're kind of rooted in real life, in their prayer lives and their family lives, things like that.
Yeah.
And we did talk. We had a one of our earliest episodes was kind of picking apart kind of regular Catholic use of social media, which you can look that up. But yeah, so I think what we're seeing is people that are whack on the internet just spend too much time on the internet. I think that's my conclusion.
Yeah. And you touched on like, some really good spots. Yeah, there's definitely places like to be goofy with things. I think, and this sort of goes again to like some people who just they become controversial because it gets them clicks. Like you need someone like Catholic Answers to be attractive. Like, right? Like they can't just be posting catechism quotes all the time. Like that's dry, it's boring, no one really cares. You're not winning anyone over. Um, because Catholics who are already Catholic are going to be like, okay, that's cool, I don't need that. And then people who aren't Catholic will be like, that's stupid, I don't care about this. But if you can like, I want to say like identify with the culture, but if you can approach the culture, this is like what St. Paul says, be all things to all people. Like you and I do ministry that centers on mission and discipleship. We have history there, and that's a huge part of it is it's not that we go in and condemn everyone, it's not that we go in and refuse to meet people where they're at. It's just there needs to be a call to something greater in it. And so with like Catholic Answers, like I don't know if I follow them actually on Twitter or not. I don't have an issue with them, so that's just really more of an oversight, if anything. But um yeah, it's like how are you gonna get young non-Catholics or fallen away Catholics to like be interested in the faith? Like you need to speak their language. Um which like to me the best way to do that is actually just hire people from that generation, which there are some dioceses that are picking that up. There are some apologetic places that are picking that up. Like, yeah, you need to hire young. Like, you want good young adult ministry, hire young adults. Stuff like that. But that's a digression. But yeah, I think my concern becomes when you kind of get addicted to outrage. And this is a huge issue. Again, this is an issue. This is a human issue. Um, but my issue is like we Catholics need to be better about it. We need to not be uh partaking in like outrage culture. We need to not be partaking in this sense of um yeah, just like this sense of we need to be jerks, we need to be aggressive. And if that's your personality, if that's your disposition, here's what I'm going to say pretty bluntly, get offline. I don't care if you are, a YouTube apologist. I don't care if you are trying to just post theological takes on your Twitter. I don't care if you're just trying to have a fun show. Like if you are just you just have a bad temperament, if you just have a bad disposition to life, you need to get offline and work on that first because as much as you might attract people who are like, oh, I love like the aggressive, like no apology, like they're just they say the truth and they're zealous and they're like, yeah, like that there's points to that. That's sure. There's some benefit to that, but there's also a lot of detriment to that. This is something I had to work on. I don't want to sound like I'm some like, you know, as the kids call some unk that does I hate that. Gosh, if I'm just like some old guy now ranting about like, oh, the young ones are all like, ah, but I was like that when I converted. I was zealous. I was on fire. I was, calling people out. I was challenging people. It's like you don't win people over that way. And, you just feel good about yourself. And so my biggest thing too is if that's where you find your ministry, or your online presence going to, being antagonistic, I think you gotta really stop. I think it's detrimental to the faith. Just like I think, when you just like hop on the train and you're just, of the like the hate train of like particular people, there's a contingent of people who don't like Bishop Barron because he like unapologetically reaches out to conservatives in America and they think it's him buddying up with the conservative movement and they have like a chip on their shoulder against American conservatives and so naturally when Bishop Barron's reaching out to them they're like oh he's becoming a conservative he doesn't understand the gospel he's da 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 and you gotta stop and think like is that what's happening or is he doing what Jesus did which is like dining with tax collectors and sinners um and then you have that all over the place and it's just like this constant feedback loop of attack, antagonize. And I just feel like there's not a lot of space on social media for charity. Even there, yeah. And again, I say this as someone who struggled with it a long time on the internet. Um, I don't use social media a ton now, and I don't like to. And me not being anonymous on Twitter has helped me not be a jerk because there's always temptation, I'll tell you that. Sometimes someone says something, you just want to like slap them with a good comeback. And I'm like, nope, that's like not what I'm called to do. That's not good. Yeah, it might get me some internet points. There might be some people that are like, haha, that's so funny. It might give me some likes, but I'm like, I don't care. I don't care about likes. I don't care about followers. I just, I use Twitter mostly for news, more than anything. I honestly, in particular, I don't really like Catholic Twitter. I I'm like not a fan of it. I think it's a very hostile environment. I think there's some good people there, and there's some people I enjoy following, but for the most part, I end up muting a lot of people on Catholic Twitter. I don't block. I block engagement bait accounts that are like, they have like a million followers and they're just constantly posting stupid stuff because I hate that and I don't want them getting money off my views. But I'll only mute people on Catholic Twitter because it's just like blocking, I think, is a little aggressive. But Like I just don't want to see them on my timeline. I don't want them to like aggravate me, disturb my peace. I don't want them to tempt me into snapping back or, being a jerk. And so it's like, yeah, they just say things and I'm just like, nope, that's borderline heretical, or you're just like super uncharitable, or it's like a very unnuanced take, which is another issue with I think that Twitter contributed with heavily because it has a character limit. Is there's like no nuance anymore. Everyone just picks a side and just like goes aggressive on that side. And I'm like, yeah, I could try to think of a good example, but it'd be like someone will say something, and then someone's like, "No, you're wrong. It has to be this." And I'm like, "Actually, like you're both right and you're both wrong. Like we're Catholics. Like it's a both and situation. Like we can actually find common ground here and it be the moderate virtue rather than jumping to these like ridiculous extremes that everyone likes to jump to because they want to feel like they're the winners." Um, so like one of the things we talked about pre episode recording was, and we're going to try to avoid names and stuff as much as possible. And so you were talking about um, a particular other Catholic podcast. You're asking me if I knew about them, and I said yes, I knew about them because I didn't listen to them, but I followed the hosts on Twitter for a little bit, and I stopped following them because one of them was constantly, at least in my opinion, like engaging in deliberate, like antagonistic tweets to like generate, engagement, whether that's because they have the blue check mark and they're trying to make money, or just because they want to drive traffic, or because they think it's funny. I don't know. But I was like, I don't like that. I don't think that's a good use of a Catholic's time on Twitter or on social media. Um, and the other host, I think I actually might follow the other host still. He doesn't do that as much. He gets a little aggressive sometimes defending certain things. But it's not, no, yeah, not to the degree the other guy does. And so I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a good productive use. Especially when you have to realize like like it's in scripture, like we would be held account for every word we utter, idle word or otherwise. And so when you're on Twitter and you're tweeting, like that counts. Like, like you could delete it, you could delete your account, like it's gonna be there. It's gonna be held against you at the time of your judgment. And so that's really like, yeah, when you talk like that, especially about people who are in good faith themselves, you are endangering your own soul, you know? And I think that's a huge issue, and people don't really talk about on social media that I've seen. There's not a lot of people that go out of the way to say like, "Hey, like you are literally endangering your soul by talking like this or acting like this." And sometimes you see corrections like that, and people usually get dismissed, which is like another issue. Like when people offer genuine charitable fraternal correction, they usually get ignored or they get like insulted, and I'm like, this is insane. Um, yeah, I have my testimony involves anonymous internet Catholicism on Twitter. And I one day I will just sit down and write it out, and I think that'll go over a lot of my pains on this stuff. But um, I think what saved me from going down that my path myself in my faith was I got offline and I met focus missionaries. And this is not you, whatever. People have opinions on focus missionaries. I don't really care. In my particular testimony, it's like that helped me a lot because they took the faith from this intellectual thing that existed on like Twitter and turned it into a real living faith with a community and an actual prayer life and all that stuff. And that was amazing. It was exactly what I needed. It's exactly what everyone needs. So there's this, yeah, this sense I think with deliberately creating controversy to drive up your own platform or to drive up clicks or to generate engagement bait so you get some like a nice little paycheck from Twitter. And it's just so bad, you know. And there's more. There's like, well, do you have any more thoughts on that? Because there's like another section of this that I think I want to go over too. That's another like thing that I have a problem with. But yeah, I want to make sure you have a chance to say anything more about that stuff.
Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of came to mind, and I think it's sort of a cliche at this point is, but it's like, how much time are you spending arguing with people on the internet, and how much time are you spending praying every day?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, absolutely.
it just feels like you can't have that much time in your life, like to do all these things.
Okay, 100%, 100%.
And yeah, so like if you're really spending more time in prayer than you are arguing in the internet,
Yeah.
like maybe your internet arguments are, you know,
Not
somewhat
good.
helpful. But like, yeah, like I just, yeah, encourage people to reflect on that in all areas of life too. But
Yeah, there is no, that's so true. And this is literally another issue I have is with these like e-apologists and e-theologians. And when I say that, I don't mean people like Trent Horn or wow, I'm blanking on his name, Jimmy Akins, right? Like I mean like again, I'm not going to name names here. But I'm sure people are, if they're listening to this that know of like Catholic Twitter or like Catholic Inc. Will know kind of roughly who I'm talking about or like have an idea of who I'm talking about. But there are like people on there who become self-professed, apologists or theologians. And I think the theologian title is way broad. I think in my mind, a theologian is a very strict definition. And I in my Twitter bio, I say I have a master's in theology, and then right after it says, but I'm not a theologian, right? Some people think like they read some old, church father document and they start calling themselves theologians. And I'm like, no, but anyway, that's another digression. Yeah, it's just the prayer part too is so important. I'm like, there's a Dominican sister, a Nashville Dominican sister who gave a talk at my college. She got invited up. Um, this is, gosh, man, I'm old. This is like 8 years ago. And she no 7 years ago, and she made a point. She was like, we talk about like prayer, how important prayer is. Like it's so important, and people always say I don't have enough time for prayer. And she goes, if you're going to sit down and you're going to give yourself an hour of TV time a day, you have time for prayer, right? Like if you can give yourself an hour to watch TV or an hour to play video games or an hour to scroll social media, you have time to do an hour of prayer. So that it's not an issue of you don't have time. It's an issue of you don't have your priorities set correctly. Um, and this is like a huge thing, I think, with like online social media is there are priests even who are like constantly on social media, constantly engaging with people online. And they're like, and they suffer these same faults that I've been saying. And again, I say all this with like knowing that I've done these faults so much in my life, and I still, sometimes fall into temptation with those faults. Although, like I said, like it's been helpful to be not anonymous, so then I watch my tone. But yeah, like not that I can like speak into their hearts or like not that I'm like, following them all the time in real life and I know if they're praying or not, but you can kind of get a sense sometimes, I think, of who like is genuinely engaged in deep prayer life and who isn't. Um, and this is funny that we're recording this. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. That was sort of like the hot topic discourse on Catholic Twitter was theologians and like how they don't pray, or not like, yeah, sorry, that's not an accusation against theologians, they don't pray, but like, yeah, being a theologian's cool. Having this deep academic intellectual knowledge of the faith is cool. If you don't pray, who cares? Right? Like it doesn't matter. It's not going to work. When you get to heaven and you go to God and you be like, look how smart I was. He'll be like, yeah, okay, dude, you never talked to me. You talked about me. You never talked to me. And I think that's a huge issue. Um, yeah, that's a huge issue in the faith in general, offline and online. But in particular, I think online, you can just sort of see um, there's a lack of like genuine prayer life in these things, and I think that's another issue on the other subject. But the thing I wanted to move into was there's just also this sense of I don't know what the word is. Yeah, I guess lack of nuance. I touched on it a little bit, but this is like such a thing where it's like if you've been on Catholic Twitter, like you know what I'm talking about. But there's constantly revolving discourse on Catholic Twitter about different topics in the faith, and it's always inflammatory. It always ends up being inflammatory, even if the original tweet that sets it off is like not inflammatory. But the big thing is like discussion. I'm just using this as an example, but like the discussion on modesty. Oh my goodness, man! It like you could just say you could just say something like women should dress modestly when they go to church. Just tweet that out, and it upsets so many people. Right. And it's like that's a normal milk a toast statement of a call to virtues for women. And I'm deliberately not being like men and women because it's not if you say that for about men, no one cares. But if you suggest that women need to be modest when they go to church, when they dress when they go to church, it sets up a firestorm because immediately you're accused of being a misogynist, you're accused of being uncharitable, you're accused of judging people, you're accused of being a hypocrite, you're all of this stuff comes out. And I'm like, why? Like that statement is bland. That statement is true. Women, and men, but again, deliberately ignoring that part for the sake of this, should dress modestly when they go to church. And it just opens up this whole situation of we need to we need to like not ever speak the truth because if we do, we get hit by a bajillion exceptions to it, right? Because then people will go into, well, what if she doesn't have anything nice? Or what if she doesn't have any other type of clothing? Or what if this is like her first time at church like in like a decade and she's like and like you're just sitting there judging her and it's like this isn't a judgment. This isn't a condemnation. This isn't like this, that, or the other thing. It's literally just you should dress modestly when you go to church. Um, and this is where the lack of nuance comes in, where we have this just like yeah, you just can't talk. You can't talk because people just get upset at you, they get mad at you, and it's like, look, I've been to churches. I've been to this beautiful basilica, and it's like gorgeous and so lovely. And a person sitting in front of me had a graphic T-shirt on, and on the back of the T-shirt, it was like a dude holding a gun, and it says, "I'll kill an MFer," like in full words. It wasn't censored. And I'm like, yeah, we're in the middle of a church in mass, and this dude has his T-shirt on. And I'm like, that's an inappropriate, that's 100% an inappropriate shirt just wear in public in general. But it's not like I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, this dude's going to hell, or this dude's terrible. I'm just like, this dude needs to dress better when he goes to church. But also, it's like, yeah, maybe he is coming to church for the first time in a long time, and he just like doesn't have any other clothes, or he just like doesn't have a frame of mind to realize like you don't wear stuff like that when you go to church. Um, but saying that he should dress differently or dress better or dress moderately or modestly isn't like a condemnation on his soul. It's just like a call to live higher. It's a call to live virtuously. Um, but then you say that, and then the attack is now, well, what if he doesn't have the money? What if he can't afford it? And it's just like this constant like obsession with exceptions to rules. And very ironic to me because there's a lot of rules in the Catholic faith. Like you got to follow a lot of different things. You have to believe a certain way and live a certain way. But we're like so quick to make exceptions to people about this, that, and the other thing. And so when we're sitting there saying, let's call people higher, let's live virtuously, let's promote virtue, you get attacked as like, being a Pharisee or being uncharitable. Um, and it's just so dishonest. And these things, the problem is like there's like a dozen different people that are kind of like big names on Catholic social media who I'm thinking of when I say this, and again, I'm not going to say names, but it's like this isn't isolated incidents where it's like some random anonymous account says something one time, and I'm just like, oh, this is a problem with the thing. It's like this is a constant issue that a lot of people are constantly engaging in, and at some point you have to sit down and think, are you promoting the Catholic faith in your desire to like produce a bajillion exceptions to someone? Like, are you actually living out the faith? Like, are you actually interested in calling people to the faith and calling them higher? Like, no, I don't think Christ is going to send someone to hell because they wore a graphic t-shirt that said a bad word on it one time when they went to mass. I do think, however, if that person continues to live out a way where they think that's acceptable, there's a lack of transformation that we could see in their heart of like growth in these virtues. And it also sets the tone for other people, right? They're witnessing like, oh, this guy can just keep doing this. I also can do this. I also can dress down. I also can like swear and be explicit like in holy sacred areas because this guy gets a pass every time he comes here, or multiple people are now getting passes on this. Um, like how often do we see during the football season people wearing jerseys to mass? And I don't know. I hate dressing up, but I will always I've been dressing up for mass now for a while. It's just like I don't like dressing up, but I'll do it for mass because that's the appropriate spot to be doing it. Um, but I'd never wear a football jersey to mass. I would never dress down for mass. It's just one of those things that I think is like emblematic of social media and Catholic use. But we're going to take a quick break and come back. I think we're going to talk about Catholic Inc. specifically, because that's a new thing coming up, and they have a conference, which they didn't invite us to, by the way. Just saying. All right, we're back. Um, yeah, so that was like a big soapboxy first part of the episode for me, but I think kind of wrapping up soonish, I wanted to just touch on this new kind of phase that's coming up. Maybe it's not super new, but it's newer to me. Catholic Inc., which I still can't figure out if that's supposed to be derogatory or not, but it's basically just this Catholic content creator sphere on the website, on social, on not on the website, on the internet, and on social media. Um, and it's a super interesting frame for things because it's basically saying there's now this subsection of individual or independent Catholic content creators that have now gotten large enough where you can sort of lump them into this idea of like Catholic Inc. And there's a group of people I think who are automatically sort of lumped in there that you think about them. If you think of like, oh, Catholic creators, um, I think the biggest one that comes to my mind is Matt Fradd. Um, I know I said we're trying to avoid names, but I feel like him and the Pillar are like large enough where you just gotta kind of mention them. Um, where at least in my mind, like Matt Fradd was like the largest Catholic creator, um, independently. And I know he just joined Daily Wire, which that opened up a whole can of discourse on social media. It was actually kind of funny because it was like something he did that united both sides of Catholic Twitter. Like no one was a fan of it. At least from what I gathered, there's very few fans of it. I think personally, I don't like it simply because I think it was good to have Matt Fradd be independent. I don't know what it's going to look like post Daily Wire acquisition. I don't listen to him a ton. I used to listen to him all the time. I listen to him now like maybe like once a month. But yeah, there's like this sense now that we're moving into a new Catholic zeitgeist of online creation where it's no longer just like this hodgepodge of random people doing their own thing, but now we have this like they're Catholic creators, the Catholic Inc. They're big names. They're popular in Catholic circles. Like you'll walk into your parish and people probably actually know who you're talking about now. And so I think for them, this is where some of these things come into like play of there's no oversight with them. Technically, they are subject to their local bishop when it comes to this kind of stuff, and their bishop can intercede and say like no, like no, like you're um whatever you're doing is inappropriate, like you need to stop, or you need to not do this, or you need to not do that. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, there was someone who was scheduling a debate, and people petitioned his bishop because they're like, this person's very inexperienced and also has like outright rejected certain teachings of the church. And the bishop came in and responded to that person and said, you are not allowed to do this debate. Um, which is like bishops can do that. Which I think a lot of like the individual Catholics need to understand. Like you are still subject to your bishop. Like he's still the master of like instruction in your diocese, in your diocesan boundaries. You're not like yeah, there's different levels of obedience here, and we're not gonna get into that. But if a bishop says you're not allowed to do a debate, or you need to like really stop doing the content the way you're doing content, like you gotta listen to him. Um, but anyway, the reason why I bring this up is they're doing a conference in Steubenville next year for Catholic creators. Um, so I don't know how I feel about that. Um, and it's also creating like consternation because there are people who got invited to be speakers and people who are like being promoted as like, look at these Catholic creators, and then there's other Catholic creators who aren't, and they're like, why not me? Why this? Why that? And it's like definitely going to cause headaches in the future. But my question, I guess, to you, Ben, is what like what are your thoughts on um that idea? The idea of like this collective group of individual creators that kind of have no oversight. It's basically self-policing, which so far I think I've made a good argument about has been completely ineffective in promoting virtuous content, Catholic content.
Yeah, I think I was like looking at the website and looking around at it. I think it's an interesting thing, and I think yeah, I think the self-policing idea is like kind of weird. Just or not weird, but it's challenging because you're kind of presenting it as an organization. Like I'm on their website right now.
Yeah.
As of right now, there is like a pull quote from Matt Fradd, like being like, "Oh, I spoke at the conference last summer.
Hmm.
Um, like it was great to be there. Great to like talk to these people." Um, And it's like, I trust Matt Fradd to an extent.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so is he endorsing everybody that goes to this conference? Like I'm sure he would say no, right? But
Right. Yeah.
it seems like he's endorsing everybody that goes to this conference, that speaks at this conference at least. Um, and that kind of makes you be like, okay, like, like kind of this self-policing thing of like you have these random speakers and like who makes these decisions? I don't know.
Yeah.
But then it's like now we're all kind of promoting each other, but like there's just so many different people and there's different people in the future. And it's like kind of like any organization, like it's like promoting each other. But the issue is there's not, it seems like who's overseeing this? Like it just seems so loosey goosey about it.
Yeah.
And you're just like inviting some version of controversy to come along. With that being said, like I like the idea of like yeah, people that are in these spaces doing good things, like meeting up with people that are in these spaces doing good things and trying to like build each other up and trying to like share ideas and work together and connect and that kind of thing. Like I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It just yeah, it does seem very weird to do it like in a public facing way. Um Instead of doing like kind of like an invite only thing. I don't know. Um
Yeah.
it is kind of a weird vibe, but at the same time like I see the desire for it. Um I think what would maybe make it seem a little um more reputable, if that's I feel like I'm just mispronouncing words today. It's too early.
Yeah.
I
We started recording very early today.
Yeah, usually I'm like I don't speak for the first few hours of my morning. Um but like I think what would make it seem I'm gonna mispronounce it again.
Go
How
ahead.
do I say it? Reputable?
Yeah.
Reputable.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um what would make it seem more reputable is like if it was kind of under another organization. Like I know that like Catholic
Yeah.
Answers, I think, runs a conference, or like other stuff. Like for somebody to take ownership of it, even if it was like an individual,
Yeah.
um, to like go on because like I don't even think they have like yeah, Steubenville is sponsoring it. Like there's nobody is like this is my deal. Like even if it was Matt Fradd or like Trent Horn or like somebody else like Joe Heschmeyer is on kind of the homepage as a picture, but I don't.
Yeah.
Is he like how is he involved? Like for somebody to take ownership of it, I think
Hmm.
yeah, makes it more reputable, but also like holds them accountable. And if something happens, they can be like, yeah, that was weird. Like they can be the ones to
Mm.
sort of address it. Um,
Yeah, and that's the big thing I'm seeing is that there's probably a point person who's like in like the director of this conference, but it's not clear on the website. It's not clear like who. Yeah, I don't know.
well, I think, and and this is like kind of a social media phenomenon
Hmm.
that I think everybody's dealing with. But like, for you to have like a Catholic creator, like they're claiming some authority,
Yeah.
and where does that authority come from? Like God, the church, right? And then if they
Yeah.
do something that's contrary to what Catholicism should be, like who holds them accountable? Because
Yeah.
somebody does have to say like that's a problem. Whose job is that? And at what point is it just like if everybody says it, it's just like all right, cool down, like the Carlos Martin thing, like it's Father Carlos Martin, sorry. Like
Yeah.
he's like yeah, if he did something he shouldn't have, like I don't know the situation fully,
Mhm.
like somebody should hold him accountable. And like the beautiful thing about him being a priest is like he has an authority structure that holds him accountable.
Right.
It's not the responsibility of every person on the internet, but when you have sort of like a private individual who just like makes videos in their bedroom, like there's some beauty to that if it's done well. But then like if they do something they shouldn't, like whose job is it? Like you're talking about the bishop, but like
Yeah.
bishops aren't most bishops in America are not like
Yeah, they're
tuned
not
in to
interested
the
in that
internet,
or tuned
right?
in. Yeah.
Like whose job it is it to hold this guy person accountable? And like there's nobody's job. Like that's the problem. And so that it's people on the internet like, well, I have to say something because I'm, the guy, but then it's like who's like, I don't know if it's you, but like I don't know. It's like this tough balance. And I think that this Catholic Creators Conference, I do think like they have speakers. Like when I'm looking at the website, they don't like seem to be like, here's all the people we invited.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's good. Like maybe that's the view. It's like, okay, like we feel comfortable promoting these four or five people,
Hmm.
but we're not. We're just inviting everybody else. We're not necessarily promoting everybody else, and so I think there's something there. But it is kind of like this tough internet phenomenon in general of like some of these people need to be held accountable. And sort of off to, I think we talked about this when we talked about social media, maybe, but this idea of like the internet apologist or like somebody claiming to be a Catholic apologist online or a theologian, even like 50 years ago, or maybe not 50, like maybe like, at the turn of the century, as like podcasts were becoming a thing, like the people that had podcasts were the people that had published like five books,
Right.
or that had like, worked in ministry for like 20 years. Like you needed sort of a support system to enter into it. And like companies would only really, or like people would only invest in, paying for a support system if these people like, had proven to be uh, worth investing in, so like people
Mhm.
that were running podcasts and getting popular, or like having YouTube channels and things and getting popular were people that had proven, some level of authority. um but now it's like we run a podcast and like what have we done, right? And like there's so many people like that, like you can just start a YouTube channel or a podcast or a blog or this kind of thing, just anybody can do it. um, and it's, if the algorithm treats you well, like you could become viral quickly. And then it's like, who is this guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
who is this guy that's speaking with such authority? And then, like there are just so many of those types of people, us included, right? Like, we have experience in ministry and, we have, some level, I guess you have a degree, right, in theology, right? But
Right.
like that's so limited, and we're able to have a voice. Not that we've gone viral to this point and not that we're like banking on it, but just this idea that like we could be this teaching authority in quotes. And like we haven't, written the seven books to prove it. We haven't like gone to conferences and spoken at all these different conferences
Right.
to prove that authority. And we had, yeah, it's weird that like there's just the internet is made up of all these quote unquote authorities. It's like, who do you trust?
Yeah, and
I don't
that's
know.
yeah, that's tough. And it's like one of those things where if you're not really hooked in and discerning this, you sort of just gotta either trust that if someone has, a popular YouTube account or a popular Instagram account or whatever, like they know what they're talking about, they're good, they're trustworthy. Um, and there's a little bit of that, I think, in the Catholic sphere, because obviously if someone's like, I'm Catholic, and they just constantly spew like heresy, right? Like they're probably not going to be that popular, at least not with Catholics. And so there's a little bit of, that bias towards, well, this person has more followers, therefore this person's more trustworthy, or this person is like better. Which like I don't think that's necessarily true, right? Like, yeah, we know like democracy is not the legislator of morality, right? Or like the beacon of truth. It's not. We know people what they will vote for, right? Like the majority of people will in fact vote for first trimester abortion. Like if we did a referendum in the country and we like listed out a bunch of different like legalities for abortion, like I think the one that would win out would be abortion's legal in the first trimester. Right, which is like totally incompatible with us. So like, obviously, like whatever is the most popular it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most true or the most good or the most beautiful. But that is sort of also all you kind of have going for you on the internet, on social media. You're gonna be like, well, this person's popular for a reason. Let me see why. And there's a lot of striving, a lot of effort you do. A lot of content creators will come out. Part of why Matt Fradd even joined Daily Wire is because he kind of hit his limit of like how much he wants to do with all the back end stuff. And if he wants to grow and expand, he needs to either hire people to do that or do something like join Daily Wire and have them handle all the logistics so he can just focus on content creation. And I think that's the other part of it too. Like you and I, we have full-time jobs, we're married, we have young children, we do other things, we have other hobbies. So this is like a side thing for us. We're not here treating this like our source of income. We don't make any income. We're not here treating this like, it's this like we're not doing 20 hours a week pushing this. We barely use social media. We have social medias for this, but we don't like never use it. Other than maybe sharing an article or an episode here or there. So it's just like how far will our reach ever get? We don't know. It's gonna have to be purely natural. We're gonna have to hit something somewhere where someone shares it and it kind of spreads for whatever reason. And that's just sort of what we rely on. It's really just providential what we're relying on, and that's fine with us, I think. I think we talked about how if we ever like hit it big, quote unquote, we'd be okay with that and we'd work with that. But we're also really not sitting here, again, spending 20, 30 hours a week really trying to turn this into something else. We don't do our YouTube videos are literally just our logo and our audio. There's nothing fancy there, nothing crazy there. I'm not engagement baiting on our Twitter account trying to get followers and traction and people to notice us. Um, so it's just, and like, we're inconsistent with episodes because we have life. We do other things. And I just think that's a big part of it too, is the motivation behind doing certain things. Which again is what ultimately I think is the trap a lot of content creators fall into of I need to be controversial. I need to shoot from the hip. I need to shoot off hot takes. I need to be edgy because if I'm not, I'm just another voice in the waves. And there are some content creators here who are independent, I would say, but they have like one person that's pretty popular. She's going to be at I think the creator conference. Katie Prejean, she's a big enough name, I think. She has like a Sirius XM show, so it's like she already has like an audience for herself, and she writes books as well. And so for her, it's like, yeah, she's not some rando on Twitter who has like 100 followers that got invited to this. Like she is someone. She like has a little bit more like authority in talking about this stuff because she's established media personality. She's an established author, and she's pretty popular. She does speaking gigs as well. But like you and I, like we're never gonna get invited to a conference like that because like who are we? Like we have experience, sure, and we have a podcast, sure, but we don't create waves. We're not here to have 100,000 followers on YouTube or whatever. We don't have a radio show. As much as you and I would both love that, just for the sake of having a radio show. Um, so it's a whole mix of things. And without that centralized oversight, it's a very decentralized aspect of Catholicism, which is just not, yeah, it's a decentralized aspect of the faith that never had to be dealt with before. And I think the hierarchy, Pope Leo is actually doing some good stuff recently. He's had some good takes on internet usage, but the hierarchy's never really had to reconcile that before. And I think that's going to be a big thing probably in the next decade. Um, I think we're going to see not necessarily, I don't want to call them crackdowns, but I think we're going to see a lot of like encyclicals and exhortations and like bishops in their territories sort of saying, you know, this or that, or like you can or can't do this. Um, so yeah, I think right now we're leaving. Here's the analogy I'm going to use. For a very long time, Catholic content creation on the internet was like the Wild West. It was people just do whatever they can, they do whatever they want, they just produce however they want to do it. They do podcasts, they do whatever, blog posts, YouTube videos, whatever. I think the West is being tamed, and we're witnessing that occurring right now, where people are formalizing themselves, they're cleaning themselves up. Some people aren't, whatever, that's their thing. Um, but there's now this like push for conformity, push for respectability, and it's becoming a career for people. And with that, when your livelihood's attached to this, you need to do things that keeps the livelihood up, which is, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think another reason probably why Matt Fradd took the Daily Wire job is because it's probably going to be a more stable stream of income for him. Because all these content creators are based off donations, and having been a focus missionary, going month by month on donations sucks. It's not fun. So, I think we're going to see a consolidation. I don't think there's going to be like explicit condemnations from bishops or anything on certain content creators. Maybe. I don't think that, that might happen. That may happen, but I think that's what we're going to see. And so all that's going to do in my mind is make it so little accounts have no chance. 'Cause that's what happens in all industries, right? Like independent film barely exists, and if you see like, oh, here's an independent film festival, unless it's like a really local spot, if it's anything like national, it's usually names you've heard before. Independent music, you have things like Spotify now, which you self-upload, so that kind of helps with that. Um, but still, like we're gonna see consolidation. I think Catholic Inc. is going to be like solidified with like like the big three like names or whatever, like Matt Fradd, maybe like Katie Prejean, and then like whoever, like Trent Horn, I don't know. And then you get like the other tiers, and then and then all the little accounts just kind of die off, because everyone's being satisfied elsewhere, and there's no internal promotion anymore for young accounts or like baby accounts because why would they? What's the point at that point? So I think we're seeing the transition from a Wild West to a tamed West in terms of online Catholic content creation. And with probably encyclicals from Pope Leo coming out, it's gonna really he's gonna start building those fence posts. It's like the end of Blood Meridian, spoiler alert, in the epilogue, where it's just Cormac McCarthy describing someone like digging post holes um, in the West, which is like symbolism for the taming of the West after what happened in Blood Meridian, which you know want to say that in a Catholic show. Uh, but yeah, anyway, those are my thoughts, Ben.
Yeah, no, I think that's yeah, it's an interesting place to be, and I think it's a good place. Like I do think, maybe there's needs to be more intentionality with it, or there's going to be issues with this type of thing. But like at the end of the day, you can't have what happens in Blood Meridian, right? Like
Yeah,
you've gotta you do have to kind of set the boundaries, and yeah, again, like that makes sure there's some type of authority structure, um, and some type of accountability.
yeah,
Ideally, it's done well, but either way, um, we love authority in the Catholic Church, so
that's
that's
true.
what
That's
we're all
true.
for.
Oh man.
All right.
All right.
Well, this has been an episode about the mean people on the internet. Um, that's what we should call it. Mean people on the
Mean
internet.
people on the internet.
Yeah,
I'll think about
that'd be clickbait.
it.
Um, Thank you for joining us today. As always, my name is Ben,
And I'm Rob,
and this has been
Analog Catholic.